Y'all, the amount of times that I claim I'm going to record a meeting and then do the whole thing, and then I'm like, oh, dang, is a lot. So, welcome for everyone for being here today. We're doing the same session this afternoon. I applaud you all for being here at this early morning. I had an 8 a.m. meeting today, and Michaela can attest, I am the least morning person in our office. So the fact that I'm even here at 9 a.m. and like kind of alert is a special moment. So you're all here to celebrate this. But with that being said, I am still kind of waking up because it's not normal for me to be this mind focused this early. So try to stay with me. I've also had a long week already and it's only Wednesday. So, but we have lots of things to talk about today. And so let's go ahead and get started. I'm just confirming that, Michaela, you can see my presentation. Okay, cool. You know, multiple screens, it all gets confusing. So really quick, here's a snapshot of what we'll go over today. I've done an SABC overview several times now, whether that was Soul or a Fall Wise Up Wednesday. So I'm going to I will be touching on an overview of SABC, but it will be kind of brief. So if you are doing something and or something kind of triggers in your mind that, oh, I need more information about that, I can guarantee that that information is in a different recording because I go into a lot more detail in other ones. But since I have done several of those, I kind of want to get to the meat and potatoes of how to request funding for the fall. And at the end, I will obviously share some little tidbits. Now it's been almost a full year that the SABC has been using the rubric, and we've really kind of been fully functioning in Triton Connect. So I have seen a lot of budget requests, and I'm going to kind of share some tips from ones that I've seen that have been really comprehensive and have scored well, and maybe some common trip ups that you can easily fix to do better in your scoring. So hopefully you all have probably seen this slide several times. It's the mission of SABC. I do just want to reiterate the mission is to provide partial financial support. There's just no way that the SABC budget can lift like 100% of every student organization here at UMSL. So that's why there's a rubric, there's criteria to get scores, and then there's also, like, depending on what score you get, what percentage of your request that you are allocated. And the amount of requests or the likelihood that a budget request is 100% funded is not likely. Probably more likely is like between 80 and 90%. So keep that in mind. And that's not because we don't want you to have great events. It's because every SABC meeting we're reviewing 20 to 40 requests, and with a budget of only $40,000 a semester, that does go a lot quicker than you think. So this is the same thing, just to reiterate that SABC would want to 100% fund everything. It's just kind of unfeasible. And to be equitable, that's why there is that scoring rubric and how funds get allocated. So who is the SABC? I have a lot of whenever I'm kind of the admin, so I know I'm actually seeing several names of people who submit budget requests regularly. So you all are probably like, this is a pro, Mindy, just move on. For those of you though, I get all of the notifications that a budget request has been submitted. So you do that through your own portal, but I get a notification. And so about once or twice a week, I go in, I check those new requests. I kind of do some initial kind of screening. Like if you haven't allocated the correct amount of time, I'll tell you that because that doesn't even get reviewed by the SABC because that's a hard deadline. If there's information that's missing that the SABC would deny your request, I try to follow up with you prior to the SABC meetings so that you have a chance to kind of edit your request. So a lot of people think like I am SABC. I just communicate a lot for SABC. I do go to all those meetings and I show budget requests during them. But the chair is actually the SGA treasurer, Zach Lentz, and I don't even vote. I don't fill out scoring sheets. I just calculate the data, do the math, and communicate with you all when things are allocated. So right now there is the SJ treasurer, Zach is the chair, and then there's 5 other students currently on the committee. So, and those students make up members from finance club, chemistry club, UMSL radio, We have a Women Empowering Women, we have some UPB members, we have some HESLA, International Business Club, so kind of a gamut of student organizations. We do have one member graduating who's been on it for several years, so we're very sad to see him go and move on to better things. But so we will for sure be filling one role, and there still are a few, because that's only 6 and this is about 5 to 9. So there are other spaces available. I've had students in passing mention that they've been interested in being on the committee, and that's fantastic. But I just need like a formal email saying you're interested so that I can actually kind of follow up with you and kind of go over the time commitment. It's not a crazy commitment, but it is kind of hefty. Currently the SABC meets, and I think I'm jumping ahead of myself a few slides, but they meet every other week. That meeting is an hour, but there's a lot of kind of prep work prior to that meeting. They get reports once a week of current, like new requests that they have to review before that meeting. In that meeting, we go through each request one by one, and again, that's anywhere between 15 to 40. And we go through everything that's included. We look at Triton Connect portals, we look at attachments. So it is kind of a time commitment, but I think it's kind of rewarding and exciting to see what our student organizations are doing. So if you are actually interested, please shoot me an email at some time. I feel like we're probably, since we only have, I think we have 2 more SABC meetings this semester. We probably wouldn't bring anyone on currently right now, but we would get some folks potentially ready for the summer and next spring. So come on if that interests you. It is kind of exciting to see what's going on. So as a reminder, again, we've gone over this millions of times. There are 3 buckets that budget requests can fall into. And we're going to go through each of these quickly, individually in just a moment. So there's general operations, team development, and programming. So we're going to start with general operations. I feel like that's probably the second most used bucket after programming. As a reminder that general operations do have a cap, and that's $1,000 per academic year. And I keep track of that as the administrator of SABC. We have millions of spreadsheets. It's actually a nightmare to keep track of, but it makes sense to me and probably me alone. I feel like if anyone else opened that spreadsheet, they'd be like, what is this? One thing to note, you'll see that first bullet about like member regalia. That would be like personal items for members. So like t-shirts, graduation stoles, honors cords, hoodies. There's currently a policy in the SABC rules that is capped at $8 an individual item. And that was put there for good reason at the time. I think before there was any type of restriction, we're going a little crazy and we're getting $80 Patagonia or North Face jackets for their exec board. And that's not really what this is about. So that's where that kind of requirement came in. What the current SABC is kind of noticing is that $8 isn't really a lot nowadays. In fact, that might not even fund a plain white t-shirt with black writing. And so I want to let you know that this last meeting, the SABC, we kind of talked about maybe some updates that need to happen. And this was one that was talked about. So in the next probably weeks or couple months, just, this may actually be bumped up. We kind of threw around like $15 or $20. So I will communicate that in new SABC guidelines that will get sent to all presidents and officers. Hopefully kind of the beginning of summer if anything changes. So I understand that number is kind of unrealistic, and so does the SABC committee. Other funds that would come out of this would be your reservation requests for like regularly occurring meetings. So maybe your weekly general body or exec boards, and any like general promotional items. So we've had a lot of requests lately for just student groups are kind of thinking about the fall and they're wanting to get their personalized pins to hand out or stickers or whatever, and that would fall under general operations. I have 2 screens going, one with notes. So give me a second here while I switch my note page. All right. The next big bucket is team development. And I would say that just in my experience with seeing the budget requests and talking with SABC, this is the most maybe misunderstood bucket. And a lot of denials for things that come under team development get sent out, which that's never like a good feeling. Like I don't like doing that. The committee doesn't like doing that. But just keep in mind that this is capped as at $2,000 an academic year. There's a couple, like you'll see you can either do 3 requests each semester, but you're totaled at 5. That's only put in there because at one point or another, some student org was trying to like have all the team development events. So those are there for a good reason, but I don't think any group has even gotten close to that. A couple things with team development is that it has to be an obvious team building or development component. We've had a lot of requests the past 2 semesters for kind of fun team bonding things, which as a higher ed professional and student involvement expert and lover, I see the value in that, but that's not really what team development is for. This is for, if you're going to professional development trainings that maybe your regional office puts on, or you hear about to go to a conference about an area of expertise that your group is really interested in, to go to an offsite center for a really intensive officer retreat where you're going to go over, in fact, you could put one for planning for the fall. You're going to plan for fall events. You're going to submit all your budget requests. It's kind of for that. So there were a lot of requests for Six Flag tickets, and I'm trying to think of some of the City Museum tickets and kind of fun things where that's not really what student activity budget money is for. So unfortunately, those all got denied. Another thing that's kind of unique under team development is that no allocations for food can be made under this. And again, this is one thing that the SABC also was kind of like, maybe we can kind of revisit that, and maybe there could be a little caveat there. Because let's use the example that I just shared about the intensive retreat where you're planning fall programs and you're going to do all this. I think it would be understandable to ask for some money for maybe a lunch while you're doing that. So I think with the no food allocation, again, that was put in there because at one point or another, some group was like, yeah, we're going to go to dinner once a week, all semester, get a free meal and claim it's team development. So there's always reasons for rules, but we're also understanding that things have changed. And so that is something that it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to go to Twisted Tree or out to happy hour to get some drinks. But we might be able to kind of edit that to be potentially some per diem per student at a restaurant if it falls within the time frame of your team development. So again, this is the bucket that's probably the most not understood well. And then finally, the bucket that is highly used, I feel like students are really getting the hang of it, is the programming budget that does have, or programming bucket that does have the largest cap. It is $2,000 a semester. So a lot of students were kind of like, wait, that's not a lot for an academic year. It's for a semester. So that's potentially $4,000. One event cannot exceed $1,000. And when you think about our total event or our total budget for a semester is 40-ish thousand, sometimes a little less. If we allowed groups to have more than $1,000 an event, we would run out of money so fast. That would only potentially, support 40 events when SABC supports hundreds. We will do like an end of the year report just to kind of hear what SABC has funded and what you student groups have done. Because I think we've done some really great work together as a campus, and it's really been exciting to be a part of. So programming would be anything that's involved with a particular event that you're hosting. So I know there's a couple people on here. I'm going to use the iftar event that Muslim Student Association, MISA, and Asian American Student Association is planning for tomorrow. So shameless plug, check out Triton Connect. They're having a really cool event tomorrow night. And they are using programming budgets to pay for the room reservation fee, because sometimes there's costs if you're using setups, chairs, tables, the technology. They're using programming in the programming budget to pay for outside catering, since it's an ethnically focused event. They did fill out the appropriate form that you have to fill out if you're bringing on off-campus vendors, which is another thing I see a lot of students mess up on. We'll talk about that in a minute. They used programming budget to get some appropriate decor for their event, which is reminding me I needed to call the mailroom to check to see if their package is there. Um, so that's like what you would use programming budget for. A couple student groups, I know like Philosophers Forum is wanting to bring a speaker to campus, and they're hosting a conference, so they could potentially use the programming bucket to pay for those like speaker honorariums. Honorariums is just like a cost for a speaker to come present. I really need to get into that side hustle because every time I process one of these, I'm like, man, I could do an hour talk and get a couple $100. So it's pretty lucrative if you have a topic you're good at. But so that would all come out of the programming budget if you're asking for money for a specific event. Kind of a little different than general ops, because general ops is just to help the organization run as a whole. So some marketing materials may fall under programming if it's a marketing materials for an event. Or you saw that there was like promotional items in the general ops. That would be like, hey, we just want to have a back stock of pins for Triton's football club. I don't know. So that's kind of the differences there. Again, I've gone all over all of this several times. That's why, sorry if you feel like I'm kind of zooming through this. So this, if you have your phone, if you want to take a screenshot of this, or if you're on your computer, this is just an overview of all the buckets, and we've talked about this. So general ops, $1,000 an academic year. Team development, $2,000 an academic year. Programming, $2,000 a semester, so potentially $4,000 a year, and one event's capped at $1,000. So now that we've gone over the buckets for the 5th millionth time, I'm going to remind you all of the timeline for the 6th millionth time. So this is just a general timeline for a request. It's a smidge different for early semester requests, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's very strict. So please plan early, and it's really for everyone's benefit. A minimum of 4 weeks in advance is when your request has to be submitted into Triton Connect. Some people are like, holy smokes, that is like way early. And I also agree. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't have the time to plan something that far in advance, but it's honestly really necessary. I'm going to use an example of a request that was, so SABC met on a Monday. They did their normal stuff. They approved all the things. A request was submitted that Tuesday. They had just met. They only meet every other week. So even though this request was sent in the next day, there was still 13 days until the SABC could even review it. And so by that time, the event's coming up. I've got to start making orders. The event planner was getting kind of stressed. And there was the SABC only meets every 2 weeks. And so there was nothing I could really do. So we reviewed it and got that going. We got it figured out. But even, it was still within 4 weeks, but it was right after a meeting. Like, just timing is rough. And the committee only meets biweekly. Keep in mind, and that's at best. So for example, say they had a meeting, it actually worked out where they didn't have a meeting over spring break, but if they had, we would have canceled that because they were on spring break. So that would have been what, 3-4 weeks without an SABC meeting. And then over the summer, which we'll talk about again, they're only going to meet once a month at the end of June and beginning of August. So if you've submit after that August meeting, it's not going to get reviewed for a long time. So please just keep that in mind. We want to make sure that our office has time to process things for you. Another thing about the timeline that's important, I actually think several of you have realized this. Yes, you are looking at your Amazon account on your phone or in your logged in where you have Prime, and it says, oh, 2-day shipping, or it will be here by tomorrow. Our Amazon is a system like business account, which is great because we get deals, we don't have to pay tax. But when I submit, say you submit a request, sometimes I'm on my computer, I'm actually it's called Show Me Shop. That's our Amazon. And I will just put it in within an hour or so of you submitting it. But then my order goes to like 3 other people at UMSL, at the system, that approves it before it finally gets chucked to Amazon to fulfill. And say one of those people are out of the office for a dentist appointment or for a trip, all of that gets delayed. And it's been tough. So, and if any of you know, Amazon also likes to be wild and deliver things all over the place. That's why I just mentioned I actually did call the mailroom to see if there's a package over there for a student org that I'm expecting that claimed it was delivered yesterday morning at 7 a.m. We're not open at 7 a.m. So we like to leave as much room as possible. So in that case, if something goes missing, we can't find it, we could potentially reorder it or find something else. And it's not the day of scramble that your organization doesn't have something important. So I just wanted to share, we understand the frustration with that, and it is truly beyond our control. And it happens to our event supplies as well. It is very frustrating. So again, if you're going to take anything from this, 4 weeks in advance. But more, honestly. And I think if you attended, our graduate assistant, Katie Bossler, did a Wise Up Wednesday 2 weeks ago about prepping for the fall. If I were you, I would suggest kind of getting your exec board or your programming board or whatever that looks like together at least one final time before finals and before y'all leave for summer, and start having those conversations about fall events. You can always kind of revisit maybe after graduation, but y'all deserve to enjoy your summer too. And it's hard to herd you all when you're off doing camps and trips and work and jobs and babysitting and all those things. So I know it seems silly, but the Office of Student Involvement has been planning our fall events for a couple of weeks now. I get we're on a little different of a tier there, but it's not crazy to be thinking, especially those events that are happening those first few weeks. Because let's think about when people come to campus, it's really critical that those first 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks are engaging. That's when they're looking for those new opportunities to get involved. They're meeting new people. And if your organization isn't organized and prepared to really lift off those first few weeks, you've missed the critical time. I'm not saying you can't, there's not students looking for opportunities later, but that is when the campus is looking for we have the involvement jamborees, we have the welcome bash, we have all these good events that your organization can kind of tag on to. So it is really critical that you plan accordingly for those first few weeks and you use SABC to your advantage to be prepared. So I know it is hard. It is only April 3rd, Mindy. Why are you asking me to think about the end of August? It will be in everyone's best interest, and it would really help your organization if you at least plan, take a look at those first few weeks and think about what you can plan and be prepared for so that you're not struggling a few days prior. So now let's talk into budget requests, pardon me. Budget requests and what that kind of looks like. So not to confuse people, but we are currently in the spring 24 budget period. And that's still open because you can have, so you could still have events the very end of April at this point and that first week of May. So, but come April 12th, that is the last day where there's no longer a 4-week lead time for an event to happen during the academic year. So April 12th is the last day to submit a request for spring 24. Spring just this semester. And then we're allowing a few weeks for pending items in Triton Connect to get cleared out. So what does that mean? So say you submit something on the 12th for a program that's happening early May. There's still, even after you get allocated, there's still the request for payment. If you have to get reimbursed, the ordering, all that jazz, that kind of happens in that same budget line. We need to have all of that cleared by May 3rd. The reason for that is we're actually updating some of our processes. If any of you have been ordering Sodexo lately, and I know some of you have, I see names and I work with your orders. Sodexo several months ago just kind of decided that the process that they had worked with Michaela on in Triton Connect wasn't working for them. They're not in Triton Connect as often as we are as a campus community. So they wanted to kind of do something different, which that's fine. But all of our forms and workflows and processes were already put in place with their prior process. And we can't just edit that halfway through our budget period because it really messes up any request for payment form that has been submitted. So that's why we need everything to be cleared so we can reinstate those new forms and start fresh. So don't you worry, like between April 12th and May 3rd, I'll be communicating with groups that have pending items. We'll try to get those taken care of as quickly as possible. But we also just want to have your business kind of cleared up before you go into finals and leave for the summer. So April 12th, last day for spring 24. And then all of those pending items that are, oh, we got approved for some member t-shirts. That all needs to be approved and cleared by May 3rd. I have a slide at the end of this presentation that has all of these dates on it. That would be another good like screenshot to take. So it does come back. So now let's talk about early fall requests. You may notice that this slide says that this is for events within the first 6 weeks. And for those of you that have been around, you're like, wait, no, early budget requests are just for the first 4 weeks. And that makes sense because you have to have a 4-week head time. So obviously on the first day of school, you would have had to submit anything for the first 4 weeks. So that's why we do the early request the semester before. We're gonna try and pilot this and see how it goes. Kind of having that additional 2-week overlap, because what we were finding is that some groups were meeting at the end of the previous semester. They were planning out their events, and you can see this period is going through any event for the first 6 weeks. So that would be September 27th. We were having some groups that maybe were having an event the 28th or the day right after the first 4 weeks. And, according to the budget periods, that didn't apply. So we would always say, hey, you need to resubmit this when that budget period for that semester opens. So that would be like the first day of school. Well, that was kind of stressful for students because really, if you're going to have an event that 4-week plus 1 day, you would have had to submit that the first day of school to be within the 4 weeks. So that's why we're extending it to be 6, just to give you that extra time for those 2 weeks. You will also, if you are on top of it and wanted to do it that first day of school, you could still do that as well. But we're kind of offering the first 6 weeks in case there's one of those events right around there that your group just wants to submit and get it sent in. Anything after the first 4 weeks, actually, okay, now I'm confusing everybody. The first 6 weeks will be in this early budget request period. You could still submit those events that are in those weeks 5 and 6. If you weren't planning ahead and didn't have that ready for that last SABC meeting, that's going to be, I think it's August 3rd or August 2nd, and you missed it and you're like, dang it, but I have an event that's 5 weeks into the school year. So you still could submit first day of school. There's more than 4 weeks prior. So those second 2 weeks are just kind of an overlap. Does that make any sense? Did I confuse you all? Okay, you could follow up with questions if you want. That's really just to give you a little leeway. So this request for these early fall budget requests will open May 8th. And they'll be due July 31st. So this is also new. A lot of times we required you to submit them all before you all leave for summer. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And this is actually going to cause a lot more work for our office and the SABC. But what we've noticed is that, again, not every group is that far thinking. And so in the past, it was kind of like, well, sorry, you didn't have it done. And so now you're kind of just out of luck for those first few weeks of school events. Well, we've all noticed in student involvement that is a critical time, and student organizations were really the ones that were at a disadvantage for not being able to submit requests throughout the summer. And so the SABC and I chatted this last meeting, and they're going to have 2 meetings throughout the summer. I think I'm getting ahead of myself for this too. They're going to have a meeting at the end of June and then at the very beginning of August to kind of look through what events have been done over the summer. So if you can't make it before y'all leave for school, which that's actually what I recommend, is to meet before y'all disperse. But if that doesn't happen, you could potentially schedule something over the summer via Zoom and fill out some requests for those fall events. So you might be saying, Mindy, but the The spring requests close April 12th. You said things have to be cleared by May 3rd. Why does this not open until May 8th? So one, that's only actually like 2 or 3 business days, but this allows Michaela and I a chance to clean up Triton Connect, get all that stuff out there, upload those new forms that I was mentioning, and getting everything set and ready for a new budget period to open. Hopefully we'll have the Sodexo stuff figured out. We'll have anything that's lingering cleared out and moved on so that there's no questions and everyone kind of starts fresh with a zero balance on all the things. So we needed a few days to kind of figure that out. But this is open for several months. So hopefully you'll have some chance to kind of look at that and get some things. So as a reminder, and I think all of you are well aware of this because I see lots of organizations that we support, that budget requests are all in Triton Connect. So you all have been doing a really great job of that. And if you have questions while you're watching this video, check an old video because I actually like walk through a budget request in Triton Connect. So it's in your portal. So say I'm Mindy Dilly and I'm wanting to fill out a request for my sorority. I would go into my sorority's Triton Connect portal if I'm the president or treasurer. There's a tile that you could do budgets, you could do the accounting book. I like to do budgets. I'd go into that tile and that's where you submit your budget. And that's also where you would check them if things were to come up. I, as Mindy Dilly, the Director of Student Involvement, get a notification that, oh, student Mindy has submitted a request, and I'm able to review those, even though they live in your portal. One quick note is that the SABC members, they don't have access to get into your portals. They don't have access to mess around with your budget requests. They are only able to view them because I am in that meeting and I am showing them. So I don't want you to be like, oh, well, the SGA treasurer hates my student organization, so they're gonna go in and delete it. They don't have that access. They are only able to see those things because we allow them to, and it's because we are there showing them. They aren't able to do that. Okay, one thing that I also started talking about the last couple sessions is a lot of student organizations, when they weren't getting the full 100% allocations, were kind of like, well, why? Well, there is a rubric on the SABC website that kind of goes over what they literally have a rubric that has question by question. It even says like what some of them are 1 through 3, some of them are 1 through 5, and how you're scored. So a lot of things that we've kind of noticed are, is there a clear purpose for this event? When you're typing the description, a lot of times students will either leave that blank, which that is not suggested, or they'll just put a social event with pizza. If I were you, that needs to be beefed up. Why should student activity money go to pay for your student organization to have a social event with pizza? Well, maybe it's the first event of the fall and it's right after the involvement jamboree and you want to invite all the members or all the prospective members that you talked about, and it's really going to be a chance for you to like gain some new members. Or maybe it is during midterm week and you really want to provide the students of UMSL an opportunity to kind of chill, play games, eat pizza. Like that is more substantive, like more beefy than just a social event with pizza. And so that for, the larger, more encompassing purpose would probably score much higher than just a social event with pizza. Another thing that we look at is your involvement with OSI programs, and are you renewing your organization on time? Are you completing your Wise Up Wednesday requirements? And the reason for this is because if we're providing you funds, we want to make sure that you are showing that you are also working to be involved in these events that the OSI is putting on to encourage members to join your organization. So that would be things like the fall and spring involvement jamboree or trunk or treat. This is not saying that if you are not able to make one trunk or treat, you're never going to score high on this. That is just one item that we look at. It's really more more looking at, are you following the renewal procedures? Do you communicate with OSI when you have questions? Things like that. Are you a good steward of your money? So a lot of times some student organizations will ask for kind of and I don't blame y'all because I'd be doing the same thing, but they kind of shoot for the stars and they ask for $800 for Sodexo catering for like a meeting where they're maybe expecting 30 people. And I understand that Sodexo is kind of costly, so that could actually potentially be a real thing. But is that what's important? Is that kind of pricey Sodexo item really critical to your event? Or could you have done something cheaper? Could you maybe just offer sneaky snack type things if it's not over a meal? So we do, or the committee really does look at that a lot actually in when they're all discussing requests. One particular item is how well you utilize and update your Triton Connect portal. So y'all, that is one of those low-hanging fruits that you could go in today, do a little updating to your Triton Connect portal, and you could potentially improve your score on that one item significantly. They just kind of look, do you have the officers labeled? Do you have events? Do you have the event that you're asking for funding for on there so that students would know that? Do you have past events on there? Just not saying that the discussion board has to be pop-in or anything like that, but are you at least utilizing it appropriately so that if someone was interested in one of these events that SABC is giving you money for, would they be able to find the information or information of who to contact if they had questions? So those are kind of the big things on there, and that whole rubric is online. One thing that I've noticed is that some students, the budget period is kind of a couple different steps. So the first step is you submitting the request. Step 1, 4 weeks in advance, minimum, got it. SABC reviews it. I get into Triton Connect as the administrator, and I will allocate in your budget line in your portal what SABC is allocated. So you'll see like, oh, awesome. I asked for $100, SABC got me 80, cool. They should know that we want the pizza. No. The next step is to then submit a request for payment, which there's going to be a gray button in your budget. It all stays in the same budget. So I'm requesting money for an event, the social with the pizza party. Well, the SABC has allocated that. I go into my pizza party event. I can see that in the pizza party event budget. That's when I'll hit the request payment. And that's where I will either upload the Amazon items that I want. That's where you'll submit a reimbursement. If I've just gone to Pizza Hut and ordered pizzas, that's where you will actually kind of let me know as Mindy Dilly, the Director of Student Involvement, that money needs to be exchanged somewhere. So that I am very involved in that process as my staff position. The SABC students aren't calling vendors to pay for things. They're not using university credit cards. They're not making appearance agreements. That falls under the Office of Student Involvement, and that's how we help you with that. So here are a helpful kind of tidbits that we've seen where budget requests are maybe falling short, where a few little tweaks could really elevate that score. So again, allocations are for only specific purposes. So say I ask for, the $80 for pizza for the pizza party. Well, we decided we don't really want to have pizza. And I asked Michaela if I can use the $80 for a Bluetooth speaker as a giveaway to encourage attendees. That answer is going to be no, because you were funded $80 for catering or food. I think if you maybe wanted tacos or maybe Pizza Hut fell through, but you got Domino's, that's the same spirit. But a Bluetooth speaker or something completely different, that would need to be re-reviewed by the SABC because that's not kind of what was allocated. So it is for specific purposes only. Another thing is that you have to be tracking your attendance to these events in Triton Connect. There are, as we all know, budgets are tight everywhere and they're constantly being slashed. The SABC budget had previously been slashed kind of up and down. We've been holding steady for the past, Michaela, how long have you been here? 5 years almost? We've been holding steady because Michaela has been able to share with these people that are like, wow, y'all have a pretty decent budget. You don't need that. She can be like, Stop right there. I have all these data points. We've actually ran out of money several years. So like one, student organizations are using it. We've had this many requests. We've had this much allocated for this many events, and it has impacted this many students. And that comes from attendance. So by you not uploading your attendance is really kind of hurting the process as a whole, because then Michaela is potentially missing some critical data. I'm thinking of like the iftar event tomorrow. I am sure there is going to be over 100 students there. I would hate to miss 100 students is pretty significant. And I would hate to not have that data when people are kind of asking us why this budget is needed for us as a office to then allocate. So that's not to penalize you. That's not because we want you to do extra work. It's honestly to help the student body move forward. If you have trouble with attendance, we're happy to help. Worst case scenario, because I know Wi-Fi and some places of campus, trust me, they're awful. Say for some reason Triton Connect's shutting down, just take a piece of paper out and take names. Take a photo of that and then just send us that and we will deal with that on the back end. Don't stress about it, but it is critical that we have that data because we want to make sure that we're able to fight the good fight to keep the money that we have, even though it has at one time been much more expansive.
Also, little tidbit, if you're like, oh crap, none of us have our backpacks with us, we don't have a pen and a paper. Sometimes when I'm doing checking at an event and it all of a sudden stops working, I just open my text thread with Mindy and I start texting her student names. I'm like, what's your first and last name? And then I go back in, I look at my text with Mindy, all 25 people I checked in that it didn't work. I type them in manually on the back end. So if you have the QR codes and all of a sudden no one's phones are working, just start texting some other officer on your board the names, and then you guys can go back in on the back end and upload those names on your own time. So you don't even need a pen and paper if it's not working, if you don't have it.
Yeah, the funniest thing is when Michaela's at an event that I'm not even at, maybe I'm out of the office, and I just start getting texts from Michaela that have names, and I'm like, oh, Triton Connect must be having a moment, or someone's phone's not working. One thing to keep in mind, and this is frustrating for everybody, is that we are not able to purchase gift cards. That is a system policy. There is a very labor intensive, not highly approved exemption to this. If it is like dire that you have this, it is not worth it. If you might have seen UPB has had some like Amazon gift cards lately. The follow-up that we have to submit to the system is ridiculous. And it takes weeks and months, and it's just not worth it for you all. You have to get social security numbers. It's not something that I really want you all to be a part of just for safety reasons. So we are not allowed to purchase gift cards. So I know that that is like the thing students want. And that's why we were like, please help us, let us do this. So we gave it a shot. It's just, I don't want to be collecting student social security numbers. Like, that's not my business. Our money, SABC money, also can't pay like payroll or stipends for work. Keep in mind the differences would be like an appearance, like a guest speaker. You're paying them to do that. That's an honorarium. That's different than like payroll or salary for like wages. All of these events have to be open to anybody, with the exception of team development. That could be just your exec board or whatever, because every student fee, even though it is one bulk number that you all pay now, that still gets sparsed out. So all of you pay something into student activity budget committee. I couldn't tell you what that is, and maybe we should look into that. I think Alex is on the call here as SGA president. But we don't want Michaela's small SABC feed to be going to something that she isn't even invited to go to. So that's important. We have talked several times, and there is a specific Wise Up Wednesday about fundraising. Student activity budget funds cannot be involved in fundraising either. Like, you can't use student funds to then raise revenue for your group. But there's lots of great examples and suggestions in that Wise Up Wednesday that I just did. I would probably say about 6 weeks ago, and it is on the UMSL YouTube page. Or if Michaela, if you have a minute, will you get on that and maybe share the link in the chat? Because I have had a lot of groups ask about fundraising. And not everyone knows that we have a YouTube page that has all of these recordings on it, and it's awesome. So that's something else that we'll be working towards. Um, most of the communication regarding a budget will happen in Triton Connect. That's just to keep a record. Because yes, you maybe think I'm the only one you're communicating with. A lot of you may have heard the name Morgan Garvey if you've done payment requests and things. She's our business specialist who actually does most of those transactions. I'm just the one shooting them her way. So she also has access to Triton Connect and can get in and like kind of read the chats and be like, oh, okay, I get this now. This is I'm calling this camp to pay the registration. Okay, yeah, I've got the picture. If you need to email me outside of that, we can get that figured out, but be checking Triton Connect for those messages. And then lastly, this is kind of a weird thing that we've realized that if you for some reason forget to put the amount of what you're requesting, which happens, Triton Connect just takes that as 0. And in Triton Connect's mind, why does a $0 request need to be approved? It doesn't, because they're not asking for any money. So it just automatically gets approved. And in those cases, Michaela doesn't get a notification. I don't get a notification. The only way that we would even know that existed is if we happen to be in your organization's portal. We happen to be in your and just see it, which I don't make it my business to like be just in there when I'm not in there for a purpose. So just know there was a couple that were like, well, I submitted it. And we like, you showed us where you submitted it. And then when we got into it, it was like, oh, it was you forgot to put the amount. Triton Connect just shoots those to being approved and a done deal. So make sure you're focusing on that. That's kind of a weird thing, but it happened a few times. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Here is that slide that I mentioned that I would have at the end. This would be a great screenshot if you're on your phone or on your computer. That just kind of goes over all those dates that I mentioned. I understand that these processes are kind of like so many things going on, and there's so many little ticky-tacky things. Us as an office try to make this as streamlined as possible. A lot of these rules are put upon us by the system, the Office of General Counsel, which would be like our lawyers. Trust me, y'all, if I could just hand you all cash money, I would do it in a heartbeat. Like it would make everyone's life easier, but that's just not how we can do things. So there are always purposes to our processes. However, if you as a active user of these processes see either a glaring void of information that we're not sharing, or you maybe think, hey, maybe if you explained it this way, it would help other students, that is welcomed feedback. Because we are always updating the website. How do we share this information? Do we do videos? Do we send the videos? Do we type it out? Like we are always trying to figure out how to better our communication. So if you all have suggestions, you could really email Michaela, you could email me, you could email the SABC email, you could email the student involvement email. Is anyone in our office would eventually get the information to the right person, because we truly are trying to make this, y'all, it is confusing for us. Like Michaela can probably attest, like when she was overseeing this process and student orgs, like it was a nightmare. And now I'm really regretting that I said I would help her out with SABC. Not really, it's been fun, but it is just every little thing you have to remember. And you should keep in mind this also, all of these rules impact like offices and departments as well. So like the OSI also cannot bring on off-campus food without filling out the correct permits. We also cannot make reservations if it isn't within the 5 business day lead time. Like we have to follow all of these too, and it is tough. So we understand. I'm going to leave that up for just another second if people need to take the last minute little screenshots. And lastly, I just want to say from the whole office and the Student Activity Budget Committee, like, thank you. We have really seen the quality of requests and events and then the planning of events that go into that really increase over this academic year. And we're seeing some quality programs being put on. We're seeing lots of students get involved. We feel like the quality of the student experience is really elevated, and a lot of that is due to you and your student organizations and the effort you're putting into events. So thank you for that. I have the SABC email up there. You should know that is mostly me checking that. So you may be like, well, Mindy, why can't I just email you at dillym@umsl.edu? You can, but so does about 500 other people in a day. So sometimes things get lost in that email, or they accidentally get shoved into a different folder on accident, and things tend to get a little lost sometimes in there. So if you can remember, if you send things to SABC email, only SABC things are being sent there. And yeah, I may only have a chance to check that particular inbox maybe a couple times a week or once a day. The likelihood of your email getting lost in the shuffle of the emails that Mindy Dilly gets in her other inbox has gone down significantly. So I'm seeing a few chats. Michaela, were there any questions that I needed to address?
Nope, all those chats were me. The first one, I just like kind of typed out what you were saying about the weeks 1 through 6
Hmm.
of the fall semester. And then just so everyone knows, I did put the attendance link in the chat about a minute and a half ago. Make sure you fill that out. If you don't fill that out, we don't know that you were here today. Obviously Mindy has said that she has worked with a lot of you that are in here today, but that doesn't mean that Mindy will remember once she does the otherwise of Wednesday this afternoon that you were here. So fill out the link. Watching the number go up on my other screen, there's 7 of you in here that haven't filled out the link yet, so make sure you open that, click it, fill it out. And then as normal, I'm sure Mindy was about to say this, but her and I will be here for a few more minutes if you have questions. Especially if there's very specific questions, you can stay on until everyone leaves, or you can send an email to that SABC email and we will get back to you. But thank you all for being here. If someone else on your exec board is really planning for the fall and you're not the main person, make sure you tell them there's another one today at 2, right, Mindy? So they can come and learn all this information for themselves. So you don't have to relay as much of that information to them.
Yeah, we'll also send like a Triton Connect update to officers, but that only goes to like who's an officer in Triton Connect portal. So if you haven't updated that, the correct people may not get that. So we'll send one out before the school year ends, kind of going over the end of spring 24, what that looks like, and then to request money for early fall. So that also will come in an email, and hopefully we'll attach this video. Michaela, will you remind me of that? All right, you are all free to enjoy your day.
I have a question.
What's up, Michael? Do you go by
Um, yeah, Michael is fine. I respond to either, so
Mike?
but I guess
Okay.
most people call me Mike, so
Okay.
that's what I put.
Yeah, Mike, what's up?
I was just wondering. You guys talked about posters, very briefly.
Mhm.
Um, wh- so so like, what's the approval process to get like posters on the board again? I know this isn't like specifically about like the events and stuff. I got all the event stuff because I came to the Wise Up Wednesdays last semester too, but.
Yeah,
But
well,
I updated this stuff too.
yeah, that's a great question. And I actually think I spoke on the phone with your advisor last week and sent her this document, but I can send it to you too. Starting last semester, we actually stopped like approving posting on certain boards. So if you're,
Yeah, right.
yeah, if you're in camp, like if you're on campus, sometimes certain departments have ownership of a bulletin board and they do their own thing. We aren't allowing people to post on those, but I have a whole list of every board on North Campus that is kind of that like public posting board, and they're all decorated kind of the same with a red background and a yellow border. So students, student orgs, even campus and community people are free to post on those as long as they follow kind of the general guidelines that it's appropriate, it's not vulgar. And then our staff walks around twice a month and kind of looks at, oh, this is way over, it's done, we're going to take that down. And we just take things down that are timely. So there's no approval process. We've had some issues lately with students posting on boards that are not those on the approved list, just
hmm
thinking that they were just another board, but that was actually one owned by a department. So they're able to take down whatever they want because that's their board. But I will send you personally the list of, there's several, I think there's probably 15 to 20 that you can post on.